I can't think of another 10-year period when the world has needed clarity, especially on the cultural, social, moral issues, rather than confusion from Rome. We need clarity right now, not confusion.
We're going to have a conversation with Dr. Paul Kengor. He's got some incredible books, but among my favorite of his books are his books on Bella Dodd, Karl Marx, the spread of communism within the church. Lots of cooperation going on these days. What does all of that mean? Dr. Paul Kengor will weigh in on that. By the way, my name is Joe McLean. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below. Joining us now, praise be to God, is Dr. Paul Kengor. He is a prolific author. He is a professor of political science at Grove City College. And among his books, some of my favorites are, of course, his book on Marxism, Karl Marx, and Bella Dodd. Fantastic works published by TAN. Dr. Kengor, welcome back to the show. You must still get accolades from that book. I mean, it was just so good.
The book deserves accolades because Bella Dodd does. I mean, she was a remarkable woman, and in fact, so in this whole issue of communism, right? I mean, she was, I call her like a female Whittaker Chambers. Whittaker Chambers was probably the best-known ex-communist in America of the 20th century, and Bella Dodd definitely was among women. I mean, she was a leader in the Communist Party, and she's the one that talked about the infiltration of churches, of the Catholic Church in particular. And she understood, too, as did the communists, Marx and Engels. In fact, I looked up this quote while I was on hold because I wanted to read it to your listeners. So this is Nikolai Bukharin, who, along with Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin, was one of the founders of the Bolshevik Revolution. And he said, quote, "Religion and communism are incompatible. Communism is incompatible with religious faith." And he told all communists everywhere, he said, quote, "A fight to the death must be declared upon religion. Take on religion at the tip of the bayonet." And now our popes understood that. And in fact, I go through this in the Bella Dodd book. I mean, we go through quotes from, Pope Pius IX and Qui Pluribus, which was published in 1846, 2 years before the Communist Manifesto was even published, right? Pope Pius XI in Quadragesimo Anno, that's the encyclical where he stated, quote, "No one can be at the same time a good Catholic and a true socialist." All right, they're incompatible. No one can be at the same time a good Catholic and a true socialist. Divini Redemptoris, an encyclical that came out 6 years after that, March 1937. The church described communism as a, quote, "satanic scourge," unquote. Wow. It orchestrated by the sons of darkness, as the church put it, right out of the pits of hell. So the church believed that this was not just wrong or misguided or misunderstood, right, but a satanic scourge, right? Created, right, flamed by Satan himself. That's how the church feels about it. Now, someone like a John Paul II, they would have met with communists, but they would have told them, what you're doing is wrong. You cannot be communists and be part of this church. But instead, what we got with that image of Pope Francis a couple of weeks ago, kind of sitting down, chummy, everybody's having lunch together. Let us listen to one another, right? No, that's not how you do this. Anyone listening right now who's a liberal Catholic who loves Pope Leo XIII, he's rolling over in his grave right now, man. Okay, I mean, and read any of his encyclicals. On not just Rerum Novarum, any of them. The stuff he wrote on socialism and communism was scathing. They all understood this. And yeah, Francis said in 2013 the Marxist ideology is wrong, but he hasn't said anything stronger than that. And the rest of that quote, but I have many good friends who are Marxists. Yeah, we know. And we saw that again a couple weeks ago.
Is this the fruit of Bella Dodd and the communist efforts in and around the world?
Well, to some extent, it could be, right? And so the communist infiltration of the churches generally, and I could actually say this, Joe, with more confidence. We had in our churches in the 1930s and 1940s, we had popes like the ones that I'm quoting. So because of that, when the communists did try to infiltrate the church, they weren't very successful. because, Rome stepped forward. We had people like Pope Pius XII who said any Catholic publications that publish pro-communist propaganda, they will be excommunicated. Well, now in the summer of 2019, America Magazine, the America Jesuit Magazine, published an article called "The Catholic Case for Communism," of all things, right? What? And that's the kind of thing that can happen when you're not getting vigilance from the leadership in Rome telling people there is no Catholic case for communism, okay? And, communism, which is socialism taken sort of all the way, and Christianity and Catholicism are completely incompatible. But without that kind of leadership, this kind of thing can fester and spread.
Lately, we've been seeing a lot of these stories. I mean, just today, there's a story out where the Vatican has basically allowed the communists in China to restructure dioceses completely, picking and choosing bishops and just sort of rubber stamping the whole process. Should we be concerned about any of this?
Well, yeah, I mean, we should, but what happened with the Pope most recently, I mean, that was not a surprise to me, Joe, unfortunately. And so I think the second half of that quote really tells you a lot about his background, where he's coming from. In Argentina, in particular, that country has a history of radicals and radicalism, coming from the communist movement. So this is something that Jorge Bergoglio grew up with, spent a lot of time with. And what I do object to is if he was going to have that meeting like he had a couple weeks ago, which even somebody like John Paul II might have had, but John Paul II would have had it in the spirit. He would have shook his finger at them and said, you guys should not be following an atheistic, militantly anti-Christian, anti-Catholic ideology, right? So he would be holding that in the spirit of correction, of helping. But instead with Pope Francis, one had the sense of a real naivete there, like, what can we learn from these people? What can they learn from us? I bet they'd like to be Catholic too, just like us. Most of those people are militantly anti-Catholic. And that same sort of attitude, I think, has fueled the whole very accommodationist policy that this Holy See has had to China for the last few years. So it's very troubling. I was asked to write about it by a couple of major mainstream Catholic sources that I often write for. And I said, I don't even want to write about it because I'm just so frustrated by this. I'm so upset about it. I don't want to write an article where I'm just kind of, raging against the latest thing from the Pope and making it sound like I think the Pope is a dupe, right? I'm just at this point so kind of fed up with this kind of stuff that I'm tired of even talking about it.
Tired, I guess, is an understatement in some way. Exhausted, I would say. We're exhausted by the constant stream of what seems so completely counterintuitive. So what should be our response?
In fact, my response is really doubly, triply difficult because I teach at Grove City College in Western Pennsylvania, Grove City, Pennsylvania, and it's Presbyterian affiliated. Most of our students are kind of non-denominational evangelicals. Faculty is too. I mean, we have about a faculty of about 140, 150 people, probably only a dozen or so Catholics. Now they're great to me. They're wonderful. They're all interested in Catholicism. It's still a good place to be a Catholic, but I'm just hit all the time from students and other faculty members who email me or walk into my door and say, hey, Dr. Kengor, I just read this today about the Pope now is blessing same-sex marriages. And I'll say, well, no, he's not blessing same-sex marriages. This was about couples.
You're working at a non-Catholic school, as you said, and you're trying to explain, and you find yourself explaining the nuances. The whole time you're like, I don't want to be explaining the nuances. I want to be sharing the clarity and the truth and the power of that gospel message. Instead, we're talking about the nuanced spin that keeps happening to us.
Yeah, well, and one of my colleagues said, we used to be able to count on you guys in the Catholic Church. And one of them said, we're watching all of the mainline denominations kind of melt down. Presbyterian Church USA, which I used to be before I converted, United Methodist Church, Episcopal Church, and And when Benedict was in and John Paul II was in, we could count on you guys. We knew that the Catholic Church was going to lead the way on clarity on these issues like marriage and gender and everything else. And I'll say, well, if you really look at what Francis has said, he's been really good on the gender stuff. He's called gender ideology evil. He doesn't support same-sex marriage. And then my friends will say, yeah, but look at this statement from, and I get to the point where I have this conversation 10 times a day, and it's exhausting, Joe, right? I mean, that's it. And you get to that point, and it's like I'm wiped out talking about it all the time. Could we please just get back to the basics?
We're kind of all exhausted by the globalist, communist infiltration that we appear to see in front of us, and as layfolk, we're just like what comes next? Like, we're all waiting for another shoe to drop. Every day we get up, we're like, oh, there's going to be something.
Right. Yes, right. And it's rarely to never, okay, now listen, here's your blessing, right? You as an individual, now go and sin no more, right? I mean, you hardly ever hear that. Everybody says, well, it's because he's the Pope of mercy, and that's a good thing. I know Jesus is the God of mercy. I mean, but part of mercy is correction too, and the merciful step of telling somebody, listen, that behavior, that lifestyle that you're engaging in could send you to hell, right? And even way before that, before you die, can cause you a lot of problems in this world. So that's not good. Stop the sinning. All right. Yeah, I'll give you a blessing to help you along your path and so forth. But yeah, you don't get that either. And you're right. Even when people like Bishop Barron, Regis Martin, right, writing for Crisis Magazine, and Bishop Barron, I mean, you're going to find no one as charitable and understanding and careful as Bishop Barron. But you just get so tired of explaining this all the time. And also, I thought of this many times, Joe, over the last 10, 11 years since he became Pope in 2013. This has been, I can't think of another 10-year period when the world has needed clarity on, especially on the cultural, social, moral issues, rather than confusion from Rome, as bad as it does now, right? And here in America, we had the Obergefell decision in 2015, where the President of the United States, Barack Obama, illuminates the White House in the rainbow colors. Then right after that, you get the whole transgender movement kind of right away, kind of issue after issue. We need clarity right now, not confusion.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.